Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another video. This is going to be our Week 8 AP poll reaction for the new Top 25 poll that just came out today. We are going to go over every single position, 1 all the way through 25, react to them, see if they fell where we think they should have fell. Is our full reaction, Week 8, 2024 AP poll. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments on these teams or anything else, drop them below and I'll make sure to respond. Every week we go over every single college football game. We also do the same thing for every NFL game as well. We do the money lines, spreads, and the over-unders. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. If you are a football fan or just a sports fan in general, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So let's go ahead and get started running through our AP Poll Top 25. Obviously, we had a lot of really big games. Teams are starting to get deeper into conference play. We had the Buckeyes playing the Ducks. Teams were competing now for that number 1 spot, trying to position themselves best for that final 12 to make the playoffs. Coming in at number 1, 56 first place votes, 6-0 Texas Longhorns. Obviously, a lot of people were thinking if the Buckeyes won the game, were they going to take over the number 1 spot? Since the Oregon won, were they going to take over the number 1 spot? Well, Texas got another top 25 win. They beat the garbage out of Oklahoma Sooners, who are no longer ranked, but still solid win. That was just enough to let them hold on to that number 1 spot. I have no issues with them being number 1. They were previously 1, and then Bama became 1 when they beat Georgia. I said that week, Bama does not deserve to be number 1. Should have been Texas. Bama lost. Texas went back to being 1, so I'm fine with them being there. But I also would have had no issue if you would have beaten the Oregon Ducks and put them there because Oregon has the best win of the season right now. They have a top 4 win. They beat the Buckeyes. Best win Texas has is Michigan, who's on the verge of getting thrown out of the top 25. So they really don't have a really good win right now. But I'm fine. 1, 2 doesn't really matter where you put them. Coming in at number 2, the Oregon Ducks, 6-0. They moved up 1 spot. They're now getting 6 first-place votes. Oregon, like I was just saying, they have the best win of the season. They beat the Buckeyes. They beat them fair and square. That's the best their offense has looked the whole season. Their biggest issue was Dylan Gabriel having time to throw the ball. Their offensive line wasn't holding up versus subpar teams. They definitely had time this past weekend. He was dinking and dunking. They were throwing the ball. They have the best win of the year. Had the Buckeyes win, since the Buckeyes were 2, I'm pretty sure that they would have catapulted Texas and took over 1. Number 3, Ducks beat number 2 Buckeyes, so they swapped them. That's fine, but I really think Oregon should be number 1 as of right now, having the best win. But 1 through 3, I really don't care where you drop those teams because they're all pretty even right now. And Texas does have some big games coming up, so if they beat Georgia, do they become number 1? So it's best just to leave them where they are till they lose. Coming in at 3, moving up 1 spot, Penn State, 6-0. They beat USC at USC. I have an issue with Penn State being number 3. Great team, great defense. Drew Aller, Singleton, Allen, one of the best running back 1-2 punches. They have a top 10 defense. USC should have won that game. They lost it. A loss is a loss, but you can't. Penn State has not been lighting things up on offense. Yes, they have a great defense, but if you had them play some of these other top 10 teams, I don't know that they should win. This is a 10-2 team at worst. I did pick them to make the playoffs this season. They will make the playoffs. Franklin has a great squad. Tim Allen, he is doing great things filling in for Manny Diaz on the defensive side. But this is not the number 3 team. I would have rather you put the Buckeyes at 3, swap them with the Ducks, because what has Penn State really done this season? They haven't done anything, and their win this past weekend wasn't impressive enough to me to move them over the Buckeyes, because if they played the Buckeyes right now, I'm pretty sure everybody would probably go with the Buckeyes. Coming in at number 4 at 5-1, moving down 2 spots, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Still, yes, they dropped 1 game. It's still the best loss of the season for any teams. Obviously, this is an extremely talented team. They have the number 4 overall roster. They have the best defense in all of college football. They had the number 2 defense last season. They brought back 8 starters from that defense, and they added to it through the portal. They have Howard. When I was watching that game and he took off running, I was thinking, what are you doing? He lost in the game. You could say that Ryan Day lost in the game too, because you had that timeout. They were talking prior to that play. You let them know you have, 6 seconds? Don't do anything stupid. Don't take off running. Don't take a sack. I don't know what they were thinking. Coaching staff and the quarterback collectively lost that game, but still one of the best running back 1-2 punches, if not the best. Henderson, Quinton Junkin, Smith, Egbuka. I said in my predictions video, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day who wins the Oregon-Ohio State game because you're going to rematch in the Big Ten championship. They show they are right there with them. I think if they played 10 times, each team wins 5 of those games. They're so evenly matched. And it's hard to beat a team twice. So the Ducks won the first battle, but the Buckeyes could take it in the Big Ten championship. But they're both getting in the playoffs either way. It's just who wins the conference, who gets the bye. As of right now, the Big Ten has 3 of the top 4 teams, so they're looking pretty solid. Coming in at 5, we have Georgia at 5-1. Georgia, in their final score versus Mississippi, how did they not move down? They beat Mississippi State 41-31. They still can't run the ball. Carson Beck is having a lot of picks. Defense looked very questionable versus Mississippi State, a 1-5 worst team in the SEC, and you were at Georgia and you won that game. That's like they should have moved down a spot. I mean, you got to penalize them. They played like crap. They are coming off of that loss to Bama. Not a good look, but then you say, if you drop them down, are you moving the Hurricanes up? Who kind of takes their spot? I could see Bama being in front of Georgia technically right now because they're so close. But sloppy win put things on notice. Georgia's sitting at 5. They're 5-1, but they have some sloppy games. They have to get things better. The offensive line has to play better, and they need to run for more than 125 rushing yards per game. That used to be their strength, was the line. Their running game has not been the strength this season. Coming in at number 6, we have Miami 6-0 coming off the bye. They didn't play, so there was no reason for them to go up or down. But had they slid up on the bye, that would have been fine with me. They do have Louisville coming up. That's a big game. If they win that game, and if Georgia has another sloppy game, then they should jump Georgia. Coming in at 7 right now, we have Alabama 5-1. They don't drop a spot. They looked awful again. Yes, they beat Georgia. That's great. Then you lose to Vanderbilt. You looked awful on the offensive line. Defensive line getting pushed up and down the field. They had the ball for 40 minutes of that game. They can't run the ball, throw the ball. Then you come out and you almost lose to South Carolina. That game went down to the final seconds. You almost lost to them. They don't get penalized. Is it because they're Bama that no one wants to notice these things? Sloppy loss versus Vanderbilt, and you followed that up. You rebounded with another sloppy performance in Tuscaloosa versus the Gamecocks. At some point, we have to start penalizing these teams for not showing up week in and week out. That's 2 weeks back to back. They have not showed up. Coming in at number 8, we have LSU 5-1. They moved up 5 spots. That was a good win versus Ole Miss. No issue with them moving up. Yes, they have that loss to the Trojans. That's not a bad loss. Plus, it was first game of the season. Can kind of count that one out. Solid performance. They beat Ole Miss fair and square. Ole Miss, solid team. Perhaps not the top 10 team that a lot of us thought they were, but that's one of the better wins of the season so far. That's more than we can say for some of these other teams. Coming in at number 10, they just continue to move up. Started out the year unranked. Iowa State 6-0, leading the Big 12 right now. They moved up 2 spots. They had another solid performance in their win versus West Virginia. They dominate every game at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Beck having a great season. Matt Campbell's team always plays solid defense. They're always disciplined. That's continued into this season. Right now, they're the front runner in the Big 12, which means they're the front runner to get one of those playoff spots and the bye week. Coming in at 10, we have Clemson 5-1. Clemson obviously beat the garbage out of Wake Forest. They didn't move up or down right here. 5-1. Props to Dabo Swinney. Props to Riley. Since that Georgia curb stopping, they've been getting better on both sides of the ball. The offense has been looking multiple. They've been able to vertically push the ball down the field. They've been running the ball. Klubnik, Maffa, Williams, great team. The number 7 overall roster according to ESPN, and they have a top 10 defense. They're very talented. They're getting better. Looks like for the ACC, the front runners right now, Miami, Clemson. The ACC is just glad to have 2 teams ranked in the top 10 right now. Coming in at 11, Tennessee 5-1. They fell 3 spots with a win versus Florida. I have no issue with them dropping 3 spots. Awful performance. This is 3 straight games Tennessee has not eclipsed 25 points. For your normal team, that might not be a red flag, but for a team that was averaging 60 going into that streak, that is awful. Josh Heupel's one of the best offensive minds in all of college football, but Nico's looked pretty shaken the last couple weeks. They've kind of figured something out. They're getting pressure on him. He's not adapting well to that, but they have a loaded team. Samson, Squirrel White, multiple weapons they can run it, throw it, a very balanced team, and they have a top 10 defense right now, and they're top 10 in sacks. Very talented team. Everything is still in front of them right now. They could have easily dropped the Florida game, fought their way back, won the game, never apologized for a win, but it could potentially be a red flag as you're getting further into the SEC schedule. Penalize them for now, but there's more than enough room for them to make that ground up going forward. Coming in at number 12, we have Notre Dame sitting at 5-1. They're coming off of beating up Stanford. They dropped one spot. I don't really know why you dropped them one spot. They won that game, was it 49-7? Dominated in every facet of the game, throwing the ball, running the ball. I've been very clear. Riley Leonard to me is not a good quarterback. I never liked him when he was at Duke. 55% completion guy for his career. The guy can't throw the ball. Play to his strengths. He's a running quarterback. Run the ball with him and with Love. Denbrock can dial up some plays. You have Al Golden on the defensive side. They have a top 10 defense. Freeman has a good squad here. Play to your strengths. Defense, running, special teams. That's it. I don't see the point of penalizing them and dropping them one spot when they won the game about as well as they could have possibly won that game. I'd at least move them up one spot or at least keep them where they are. They definitely didn't do anything to drop. Coming in at number 13, we have, plus they have a top 14 win. They beat the Aggies at the Aggies. That holds a lot of weight here. You can't be dropping them when they're beating teams 49-7 and they have a top 15 win behind them when a lot of these teams have no top 25 wins. Coming at 13, we have BYU 6-0. They moved up one spot. They just keep winning. Props to the Cougars. They're competing with Iowa State now to try to get that Big 12 spot. They run the ball, throw the ball, but it's their defense. They're only giving up 15 points a game, playing solid defense. No one wants to play them right now. West Virginia was coming into that game hot. They shut them down. They beat them fair and square. I'm sorry, not West Virginia. They beat Arizona. Arizona was coming in, slinging the ball. Fafita, McMillan, they shut Fafita down. What do you have? 2 or 3 picks that game? That's one of the better quarterback wide receiver combos. It was Iowa State that beat West Virginia. BYU looks like a good team right now. The Big 12 has a lot of teams piled at the top. Could be, it could get pretty competitive down the stretch. Coming in at number 14, we have the Aggies sitting at 5-1. Obviously, they had the bye week this past weekend. They didn't do anything to move up, down. Perfectly fine with them sitting where they are. But they went up one spot. Notre Dame, who beat the Aggies in College Station, they won a big game and they moved down. That makes no sense to me, but no issue with them being where they are. They've had a solid performance since their week 1 loss. Coming in at 15, we had Boise State 5-1. They moved up 2 spots. Not the best game versus Hawaii, but Genty continues to do what he does. He had almost 200 yards rushing. He's closing in on 1,300 yards so far, 17, 18 touchdowns. Video game numbers. This is a team that's competing for the group of 5 playoff spot. They're the front runner right now. You have to root for Boise. Their only loss is versus Oregon, the number 2 team, potentially the number 1 team going forward. That's a very good loss. Boise looks great. Got to root for the Smurf turf there. Coming in at 16, we have Indiana moving up 2 spots. Obviously, this is one of the highest scoring teams in the country under Cignetti. They're running it, throwing it. They're averaging 50 points a game, and they're only giving up 15 points a game. This is one of those under-the-radar Big Ten teams that, coming out of the Big Ten, if they finish 10-2, they might be fighting for one of those final playoff spots. They deserve to be where they are. They're in one of the power conferences, and they're undefeated through the first 6 games. Coming in at 17, Kansas State 5-1. They moved up 1 spot. I would have moved them up further. So they have a loss versus BYU, who's the number 13 team. That's a good loss, technically. They just beat Colorado in Colorado. A lot of people had Colorado winning that game, and I said last week, Kansas State is going to surprise you. They're going to win it. They're going to run all over Colorado. I don't care that they shut down UCF. They're not going to shut down Gideon. He ran all over them. Avery Johnson did just enough to win the game. Very close game, good game. Kansas State, BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State. Like I said, there's a lot of evenly matched teams competing there at the very top of the Big 12. I'd have moved them up 2 spots. Solid win at Colorado. Coming in at 18, dropping 9 spots. Ole Miss 5-2. You had to drop them. That's 2 losses in the last 3 weeks. They lost to Kentucky. Then they lost this past weekend to LSU. That's a good loss, but I would say pretty much, barring a lot of disaster second half of the season, the Rebels are probably out of the running for the SEC championship. That's 2 SEC losses. You can still compete for that final 12, but you got to get a lot right. Jackson Dart, Trey Harris, Parrish, they have the weapons there. They have a solid defense, but the very end of these games, they haven't been able to close out the last 2 of 3 weeks. They brought in the number 1 transfer portal class. They put all their chips in. If there's ever a year for Ole Miss to compete, it's this season. They have to win from this point out. They cannot lose any game. They have to go 10-2 in the SEC to make one of those final 12 spots. Coming in at Missouri, they moved up 2 spots. They're 5-1. They beat UMass at UMass, but UMass has only won like 4 games in the last 3 years. That doesn't mean much, but hey, they rebounded from the loss to the Aggies. They beat the Minutemen. They beat them as bad as they could have beat them. They have a very easy SEC schedule. They can practically sleepwalk to a 10-2 season. Coming in at 20, we have Pitt. They moved them up 2 spots. I like Pitt. I've been rooting for Pitt. They are undefeated out of the ACC. Holstein and Company, Pat Narduzzi's squad, since they changed the offensive scheme, they've been lighting things up. They're throwing the ball for like 350. They're running for 150. This is a team that can beat you passing, throwing the ball. Defense is kind of questionable, but that was a really close game versus Cal. Yes, they won the game. Never apologize for a win, but a 1-possession win when they were pretty heavy favorites. Cal has a solid defense, leads the nation in interceptions, leads the nation in turnovers. Solid team to beat, but I would have at least kept them where they were, because I think if they played SMU, they might lose that game. Coming in at number 21, we have SMU 5-1, moving up 4 spots. The ACC is starting to get a lot of competitive teams from teams that no one was giving a chance. Pitt, Mustangs. But I said when the season started, SMU should have been ranked top 25 to start the season out. They had 10 wins last season, and they brought back a lot of starters. They lost Stone, but they've replaced him. Jennings is running the ball, throwing the ball. Very talented team. Rhett Lashley has a really good squad here. They play solid defense. They're only giving up 20 per game, and they're averaging 47 points a game. Very talented team. And Miami, Clemson, this could be your number 1 rival here coming out of the ACC. Coming in at 22, we have the Fighting Illini, 5-1. They moved up 1 spot. Their only loss is to was it Nebraska they lost to? Very solid team, very talented team. They beat Purdue. That was a sloppy game. They had a massive lead, and then they gave it all the way up versus Purdue. Sorry, they lost to Penn State, which was a good loss. That loss to Purdue, what makes you move them up 1 spot? They beat Purdue, was it 50-49? And you move them up a spot. Purdue's the worst team in the Big Ten. They're 1-5 right now. And you move them up 1 spot. No, they should have been dropped out of the top 25. They were number 23. Yes, they have a good loss versus Penn State. They have some good wins, but that was inexcusable. This is a defensively focused team. The main thing that they hold on to is their defense, and they gave up 49 points to the Boilermakers when that game 50-49. Should have been penalized, should have thrown them out of the top 25. They still have a lot of games left. They can earn their way back in, but you have to penalize these teams when they lay eggs, especially giving up 49 points to the Purdue Boilermakers. There's no excuse for that. Coming in at 23, we have Army, previously unranked 6-0. Army, man, they are playing really good this year. They're averaging 45 a game. They're only giving up 8 points per game. They're running the triple option. They're sucking up clock. The last week of the regular season, when it's just Army, Navy, it's probably going to be the most fun we've had in that matchup in a long time, because both teams are going to have really good records, and they're probably both going to be ranked. So that's going to be really fun. They perfectly deserve to be ranked. They're playing solid defense, solid team, really tough to beat. Coming in at 24, we have Michigan 4-2. They didn't play. Michigan is what Michigan is. I think I picked them to go 8-4 this season. If they lose one more, they're out. They don't look good at all. Warren, Orgy, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. They have not answered the quarterback situation. Their offense is a complete joke. Yes, they have a solid defense, but when you leave your defense on the field that long, they're going to get tired, wore out. They're going to give up points. They still have the whole Big Ten schedule coming. It's going to get rough. They got to get things sorted out quick. Coming in at 25, like I was saying, Navy 5-0. When Navy plays Army, it's going to be fun. The difference about Navy this season is they're not just running the triple option. They're throwing the ball. I think they're averaging 150 through the air, and they're running for 320. This is a team that's just not limited to the ground game. Now they're throwing the ball. They're playing well. They're playing solid defense, only giving up 10 per game. Very talented team. Both of the military academies deserve to be ranked just outside of the top 25. I don't know how they're not ranked. Vanderbilt, 4-2 with a win versus top 10 Alabama. Give them some respect. Let them in the top 25. People keep holding it on them that they're Vandy. We don't really want them here. Well, they beat Alabama, and you don't want to penalize Bama for anything. You won't move them down under any circumstances. So you need to give Vanderbilt some credit for beating the crap out of them. Coming in at 24, coming in next, we have Nebraska just outside of that top 25, and then Arizona State. They're having a good season. What are they, 5-1 right now? They just beat Utah. Solid. They might be competing for the Big 12. That's one team to keep your eye on. Just outside of it, Oklahoma, Washington State, who's 5-1, Texas Tech 5-1. There's some really good teams out. Louisville is also one of those teams that you got to watch. You know, they have Miami coming up. If they win that, that'll catapult them right back into the top 25. So that's our breakdown. That's our reaction to the Week 8 AP poll that just came out for our new top 25. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. If you have any comments about these teams or anything else, drop them below and I will respond. And our prediction video will be out later this week. Thanks, guys.